From Graziano, accused of making inappropriate comments on set, to the show almost ending because of a lack of female characters, these are Law and Order controversies fans might not know about. Right off the bat, I've got to fill you in on what showrunner David Graziano's been up to, and you might want to sit down for this one. Back in December of 2022, more than a dozen people accused him of being a real jerk. They said he created a horrible working environment, made inappropriate comments toward women and people of color, and had a scary temper. Haley Cameron, a former script coordinator on SVU, spoke up about David's behavior and described him as unprofessional, self-centered, and immature. Haley says she's been in the biz for a long time and had never seen that level of misogyny. And it wasn't just Haley. Another script coordinator, Amy Hartman, worked with David on the show Coyote in 2021, and she had a similar experience. She called him toxic and said she ran away from that job as fast as she could. Not only that, but Amy warned others to stay away from him. Even David James, another script coordinator from Coyote, agreed with Amy. James said working under Graziano was the worst job he ever had in Hollywood. And after getting all this backlash, Graziano finally came out of the shadows to say his piece. Turns out he suffered abuse as a child from a Catholic priest and his mother, but he doesn't blame his past troubles for his bad behavior on set. He said that when you're a showrunner or part of a writer's room, you have to dig into your own experiences. And for a show like Law & Order SVU, he drew on some of his past traumas, which stirred up a bunch of emotions. But if you thought that was bad, wait until you hear about what director Jace Alexander did. And no, I'm not talking about the Seinfeld guy. Jace didn't direct any episodes of Law & Order SVU, but from 1994 to 2005, he directed dozens of episodes for the original Law & Order. And when he was arrested back in 2015, he brought a ton of bad publicity to the franchise. Jace was caught sharing inappropriate videos with children after authorities got a hold of some seriously messed up stuff involving preteen and teenage girls. And guess where it all came from? Yep, an IP address linked to his house. Once they had a search warrant, they dug into his computers, and lo and behold, their suspicions were bang on. As if having all of that in his possession wasn't disgusting enough, he even shared the video on torrent. Jesus. And that wasn't the only Law & Order scandal that made headlines. There was also the beef between Diane Neal and Mariska Hargitay. Court documents revealed a nasty feud between the two. And long story short, Diane wasn't a fan of Mariska's and even called her a total b****. Hey, her words, not mine. Not only that, but Diane had some not-so-nice words for the rest of her co-stars and referred to her fellow cast members as awful people. But there is one exception. Diane had a lot of love for Ice-T, the only person on set she actually liked. Later, she tried her best to cover up all the drama and denied calling Mariska the B-word, but it was too late for her to try and make up. And while it's often the cast members who create havoc, other times it's the writers. This one time, producers of the show found themselves in hot water over an episode that tackled Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. Some religious organizations weren't too pleased with the episode, and they claimed the storyline, which was based on real-life events, went too far. It was considered a mockery of the hatred experienced by minority communities, and that's a serious accusation. The groups were worried that the episode's wild plot could backfire, and instead of shedding light on the real issues of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, they feared it might stoke the flames of hatred against Muslims. Man, that's definitely not what you want from a show that's trying to address such sensitive topics. It's like trying to put out a fire by throwing gasoline on it. Not a good idea, right? And that wasn't the only episode that rubbed people the wrong way. Did you know that NBC decided to not re-air one of their Law & Order episodes? Back in 2001, there was an episode titled Sunday in the Park with Jorge, and it stirred up some major controversy. The episode took things way too far and caught a lot of heat because it showed the Latin community as the ones responsible for all the crime. The backlash was so intense that NBC put their foot down and refused to re-air the episode. But hey, I'm not complaining. Someone over at NBC was smart enough to make a judgment call on that one, and I'm all for it. That wasn't the only scandal on the show that shook the world, though. There's also the time a writer was fired for a horrible tweet. It was a post that threatened anyone participating in the Black Lives Matter protests. Whoa, now that's crossing a line. The First Amendment gives everyone in the states the right to protest, which is why the post raised so many eyebrows. Not cool, man. Not cool at all. That's when Dick Wolf, the creator of Law & Order, stepped in for some damage control. He wasn't having any of it, and when he found out about the writer's post, he canned them. Boom! Fired! Thanks for coming out. Wolf made it crystal clear that he wouldn't tolerate that kind of especially during a time of national grief, when so many people were mourning the death of George Floyd at the hands of a white police officer. You gotta hand it to Dick, because he handled that like a champ. And it's no secret Law & Order deals with a range of sensitive issues, but sometimes things go sideways. Remember the time they had that pronouns issue? They messed up by using the wrong pronouns for a character who was a victim of a hate crime. You know how it goes with Twitter detectives. They're always on the lookout for slip-ups, and this time they didn't hold back. They called out the showrunner for the mistake, but here's the interesting part. Despite the mishap, the episode tackled the whole gender identity debate in a balanced way, digging deep into all the complexities and challenges. Now that's the Law & Order I know and love, taking on tough issues in a thought-provoking way, and I've got to give credit where it's due. It's like they wanted to make amends for their slip-up and show their audience that they take these things seriously. It wasn't the first time the show was called out for dropping the ball. There was also the time the show almost ended because of a lack of female representation. Yep, you heard that right. Here's a fascinating behind-the-scenes story from the original Law & Order days, when Sam Waterston was one of the main stars. Turns out NBC almost pulled the plug on the show because they felt it lacked female actors in the cast. NBC was so concerned that they threatened the show's producers and were like, hey, you better shape up and start casting more women, or else we might just pull the plug on this whole operation. Well, not those exact words, but you get my drift. The producers took the threat seriously, went back to the drawing board and started shaking things up, making sure to bring in more talented female actors to join the squad. It was a real game changer for the show and a direct result of NBC's strong stance. Clearly, NBC network execs have the power to influence the creative decisions behind a TV series, and they're not afraid to use it. In this case, NBC recognized the importance of gender representation and pushed for more inclusivity, which is definitely a step in the right direction, and kudos to them for that. So from the show almost ending because of a lack of female characters, to Graziano accused of making inappropriate comments on set, those were Law & Order controversies fans might not know about.